Hey, what's everybody doing? It's me, Crazyfrankie, and I'd like to welcome you to my Week 10 4 key game picks. Before we talk about Week number 10, what happened in Week number 9? I think we're starting to get a clear picture of who may be the contenders and what may be the pretenders. And where do I begin with that statement here? Well, obviously, I'm going to first go with what happened during the Kansas City-Miami Dolphins game in Germany. I think it's clear to say that the Chiefs are more than likely going to be the number one seed, given the fact that the Miami Dolphins, as of this point on in the season so far, has not been a team with a winning record, let alone teams that are very competitive. I mean, they trailed 21-0 in the first half of that game, and then it took a while for them to get back on course offensively, but then in the end, they just could not tie the game, and they ended up losing to the Chiefs. The Chiefs' defense has done a fantastic job, and give a lot of credit to Spagnuolo that Steve Spagnuolo really has done a fantastic job with that defense, and given the fact that this Chiefs team probably may be the more better team they've had, maybe than last year's Super Bowl run. I mean, it's really hard to say going forward. Look, I mean, the way it's looking right now, the Chiefs are poised to get the number one seed in the AFC. I don't think there's anybody stopping them. And going to the NFC here, obviously the game between Dallas and Philadelphia was definitely a heavyweight fight, and what I really wanted to see out of that football game. But what I didn't want to see was towards the end of the game, where there were so many dumb penalties from both the Eagles and the Cowboys, basically trying to one-up each other to see who wants this game even more. It's really hard to say in the NFC who really is the best team in the conference. I mean, I have to say slightly towards it's probably Philadelphia, given the fact that the 49ers are on a three-game losing streak. The Cowboys completely fell apart in the final minute in the fourth quarter of that game against the Eagles. And it's really tough to say where the rest of the NFC conference stands. So if you have to say who's the best team right now so far going into Week 10 in the NFC, I'd have to say it's still the Eagles, because the Cowboys had a number of chances they could have won that football game. Obviously, the penalties that the Eagles had late in the game did help the Cowboys a lot, but then they ended up going backwards in the end, and Dak Prescott could not win the game, could not throw a game-winning touchdown. So if you look at it from both the AFC and NFC, really the AFC is really looking strong. And because the way the Chiefs played against the Dolphins, really, the Chiefs are definitely the best team in the conference. And I don't think anybody's going to catch them. They're definitely going to be the number one seed for sure. In the NFC, it's still up for the best team in the conference is still up for grabs to get that one seed. The Eagles are still slightly ahead. But look, I mean, even though the Cowboys lost, you still can't count them out just yet. They could. Who's to say the Eagles could still give up a game or two towards the end? So look. The Eagles had, for the time being, have some sort of moral victory, but they cannot stumble the rest of the way. They got to win. They got to win out all the remaining games to ensure that number one seed. So that's pretty much my thoughts on what happened in week number 9. Anyways, let's talk about Week 10. All right, let's begin with key game number 1. And that is the Houston Texans versus the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are a touchdown favorite by 7, and I would say that's about right. But you have to give it up to C.J. Stroud, 30 of 42, 470 yards in a shootout he had with Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers, 5 touchdowns and no interceptions at all. Now, Joe Burrow, in a big win over the Bills, was 31 of 44, 348 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. The reason why I say this is a key game, obviously for the Texans, they're back to 500, and they're trying to get over that mark, and at the same time, too, trying to stay within any sort of distance for a playoff spot. But this is the Texans' really biggest test so far this season. The Bengals are finally getting on a groove. They're with a record of 5-3 as of up to this point right now, and Joe Burrow's healthy. You're asking a lot. You're really asking a lot from the Houston Texans to face this kind of sort of good football team the Bengals are starting to become now, given the fact they started slow earlier in the season, but they now starting to look dangerous. A lot of their team is getting healthy, and you're asking a lot of the Texans defense to really stop Chase and Burrow from really lighting it up offensively. Well, when I look at it this way, look, the Bengals have the better offense. Bengals defense probably is just a little bit better than the Texans. But you never know if this could be a football game. It might be I would say the Texans might make this a game in the first half, but knowing the Cincinnati Bengals and the way they basically just manhandled the Bills last week, the Bengals are really the better team in this game here. You got to take the Bengals -7 in this one here, and that's where I'm going with here. The Bengals should beat the Texans here. Definitely I would say that that number is right. It probably might go to 6.5, but it wouldn't surprise me if it goes to 7.5. They're more favored in this one here. I like the Bengals in this one here. That's kind of a sure pick on this one here. Bengals over the Texans. All right, key game number 2. A crucial one here in the AFC North Division. The Cleveland Browns versus the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens are a 6-point favorite, and I would say probably that number might go to 5.5, maybe 5. I'll get to my reasons on that. Now, Deshaun Watson went 19 of 32, 219 yards, 2 touchdowns in his first game back after suffering an injury he's had for quite a while. But then again, they were playing a very, very sorry Cardinals team who traded Dobbs to the Vikings, and then he ends up winning the game for them against the Falcons. Lamar Jackson of 21 of 26, 187 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. The defense really was a bigger factor for the Ravens in a big, big victory over the Seahawks last week. This game is kind of intriguing for a couple of reasons. One, the Cleveland Browns defense is actually pretty decent. They've been playing some pretty good ball on the defensive side. And now here comes a true test for the Browns against a Baltimore Ravens offense that has really come alive here, given the fact with the Ravens with a record of 7-2, they've just been on fire offensively in the last few games. And I would say the Browns defense will definitely have their hands full in this game. Could this be a very close game? There's a chance it will be, but I could see this going. I'm kind of leaning towards the Ravens here because given how their offense has really come alive here, and they are really on a roll, I think that the Cleveland defense will definitely have a hard time against Lamar Jackson and an offense. And given the fact that the Ravens defense has also come alive as well, they're almost on par with the Browns defense. So I look at it this way. Lamar Jackson and that offense is just better than Cleveland's offense in this one here. And I'm going to pick the Baltimore Ravens this one. Take the Ravens -6 on this one here. I think to me that Ravens offense will definitely give the Cleveland Browns defense some fits. And they gave the Lions some fits when they played them, especially when their defense was on a roll, and they ended up torching them. Who's to say against the Browns defense they're going to do the same thing, and it wouldn't surprise me if it happens again. Lamar Jackson's on a mission. Their offense is healthy, well, except obviously they lost some key players earlier in the season. But I look at it this way. The Ravens offense just looks pretty good, and they're on a mission here. I like the Ravens in this one here. I think this might be a close game, but I think they'll barely beat the Browns in this one here. I like Baltimore -6. You got to take the Ravens over the Browns. Key game number 3 now. The San Francisco 49ers versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. A game that the 49ers have to have in this one here. Especially the fact that them and the Seahawks are battling it out for first place in the NFC West when we all thought at the beginning the 49ers looked like the more dominant team. Now, the 49ers are coming off a bye week after the loss to the Bengals. Brock Purdy was 22 of 31, 365 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Now, also the Jaguars are also coming off a bye week as well. Trevor Lawrence in Week 8 was 24 of 32, 292 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interceptions in a victory over the Steelers. This will come down to definitely here, as both offenses, I would say, are on par. Even though you could slightly have the way that Trevor Lawrence and the offense probably has a slight edge. But if there's ever a game I can see the 49ers probably getting right, and this is not an easy game for them, because the Jaguars are in first place in the AFC South at 6-2, and obviously probably more likely is going to run away with the division. But this will be a test for that. This will be a test for definitely the 49ers defense against that offense of the Jaguars. But this is just a prediction here. But if there's ever a time for the 49ers to get right, it's definitely this football game here. The 49ers are favored by 3. And that number will definitely be much lower, maybe at 2.5, maybe at 2. I would say this would be a game the 49ers get right, and I see Brock Purdy finally getting back on track. I could see this being definitely a low-scoring game. Probably more like a 17-14 type of game, or maybe a 17-10, or maybe a 14-6 game or something like that. Because the 49ers defense, obviously they've struggled, but I think the bye week kind of helps them a little bit here in terms of healing and resting up, especially as we're already into the second half of the season. And the Jaguars are flying high, but I think, to me, it wouldn't surprise me if the 49ers win this game here. And I'm actually going to go with the Niners. I think the Niners get back on track on this one here. It will definitely be a very close game, a low-scoring game as well. I think that both offenses will struggle in this one here. I think it boils down to who does not turn the ball over in this game. It's a tough pick here. You would say the Jaguars seem to be more the better team in this one here, but I think the 49ers bounce back in this one here. I think they finally get back on track in a game they have to stay in front of Seattle. I'm going to pick the 49ers at -3. This is a 50-50 pick. It's not a sure pick here because this game could go either way. But I'm going to pick the 49ers. I think they finally get back on track on this one here. And some of the 49ers players that really were questioned, that they had some players that didn't play all that well due to some tightness and soreness and some hamstrings. I think they get some key players back in this one here. I think they'll definitely give the Jaguars a football game in this one here. It'll be a close game, but the 49ers, I'm picking they'll come out victorious in this one here in a very close game. I'm picking the Niners. All right, finally key game number 4. Kind of an interesting matchup here, and it is the Detroit Lions versus the Chargers. The Lions are a slight 2.5-point favorite, and I would say that is about right. A lot of questions going into this football game for the Chargers, even though Justin Herbert had his worst performance last week against the Jets, but luckily the defense came alive, and finally the Chargers back to 500 with a record of 4-4. Herbert was 16 of 30, 136 yards, no touchdowns, and no interceptions. The defense did most of the scoring in that football game, along with Austin Eckler in the running game. But now here comes the toughest test for that Charger defense against a Lions team that is surging. The Lions are, like I said, are a 2.5-point favorite. They have a record of 6-2 currently right now, and still in first place in the NFC North Division. Jared Goff was 23 of 37, 272 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception in a big victory over the Raiders back in Week 8. The Lions were on a bye week in Week 9. It boils down to which offense will make the bigger plays and who will score that will be more effective in the red zone. Because to me, the Lions are slightly better, are definitely a much better team than the Chargers when it comes to offense. Defense-wise, I would say they're on par. Their defenses are about evenly matched, even though the defense for the Lions is a little bit better than the Chargers, in my opinion. But I give the defense is really more on par with each other. But it really boils down to, like the Jaguars and 49ers, as I talked about earlier, who does not make the mistakes in this football game. It's going to boil down the turnovers in this football game here to see which offense will do a much better job on the red zone. It's a tough pick here. It's definitely a 50-50 pick. This should be a good one at SoFi. But I hate to pick against the Chargers here because if you see in the background there, I'm kind of a Charger fan here, and it's been disappointing this season for the team. But the problem is, though, when it comes to defense, when it comes to the Chargers defense and all that, and given how Jared Goff has really resurrected that Lions offense, I'm picking the Lions here. It's going to be a close game, but given the way the Chargers defense has played all year, last week was really the Chargers defense, their best game all season. But when it comes to a offense like the Lions and the way they've come alive, and especially they can run the ball effectively, that's going to be a problem for the Chargers in this football game here. And that's why I'm picking the Lions at -2.5. They'll beat the Chargers. It should be a good one. I think it's going to be a close game, but I just think the Lions offense is just better. They definitely have a better running game, and they'll definitely give the Charger defense fits in the run. I'm picking the Lions over the Chargers. It pains me to say that. All right, everybody. Those are my 4 key game picks for week number 10. For all my week 10 picks, please check the description below. And I'll talk to you guys next week when I make my picks for week 11. And I want to wish everybody well and now Veterans Day. All my love and honor support for all the veterans out there. You will always be in my heart. You will always have my utmost respect. May God bless all of you. And I'll talk to you guys next week when I make my football picks for Week 11. Take care and enjoy this NFL weekend.